Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about The Mythmakers by Donald Cotton. Now this story sees our first story under producer John Wiles. Now his first action was to make a pure historical. Very strange. Set around the Trojan Greek War. Which had, in history there's a lot of legends, and it lasted for 10 years and many heroes and that came out of it. And one of the famous bits about it is how it's ended with the Trojan Horse, which this story does deal with, in which the Greeks gave the Trojans a gift, which is this massive horse, as if to end the war, and they thought that they were safe, and so they took the giant horse back to their city, and then overnight guards, Greek soldiers actually were hiding inside the horse and attacked them, and that's why we get the term Trojan Horse. If you're into your technology and stuff, you hear that a lot when it's spam emails and stuff, so that's where we get the term Trojan Horse. And as well, this story sees the last story with Vicki in it. But is it any good? Let's get into it and see what's the story about. Now this is a 4-part story, and every episode is lost from the archives. Hooray, BBC, thank you. Really needed that. There are few surviving clips which have been inserted in the loose cannon reconstruction, which I am using as my reference for this marathon. But yeah, there's no surviving episodes, which is a crying shame. Because a lot of this story has a lot of visuals, I'm guessing. The first scene is a fight scene between a Trojan and a Greek. So already the medium of the television not being there is already a big problem. But and we see the Doctor look through the TARDIS, and he mentions Vicky's hurt ankle, which was referenced from the Galaxy 4. So a bit of continuity there. I thought it had a bigger part, but now rewatching it, my memory must be slitting or something, because that's the only time it's ever brought up. Apart from the fact that she has to stay in the TARDIS. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So there's these two soldiers fighting, and the Doctor leaves the TARDIS to try and talk to him. However, just before he gets out, the Trojan dies. I don't know. And the Doctor tells this guy, don't kill. But then they talk very friendly, and this guy then believes that the Doctor is actually Zeus, the god of thunder, I believe, in Greek. I could be wrong. If you correct me, please do. And then we get this whole debate of the Doctor's now going to help the Greeks to help them in their war, and they don't let him back into the TARDIS. And Stephen and Vicki, they're watching this through the scanner, and Stephen decides to go and find the Doctor, whilst Vicki stays in the TARDIS. And Stephen then gets captured by the Greeks, and they believe he's a Trojan spy. And there's this whole escapade with the Doctor should sacrifice him, and the Doctor says you should sacrifice him by the temple. They think the TARDIS is a temple, and not everybody believes that the Doctor is Zeus, and it's all talking and stuff, but the story, I know some people really do love this story, but it wasn't doing anything for me. It was really dull and slow. Maybe it's the fact that it might have been a very visual story and we don't even know what the sets mostly look like in the story. Most of the reconstruction is using films in the 60s and 50s and then 70s put in black and white to bring the effect. And those films about the Trojan War and the Battle of Troy. And yeah, I don't know, there's nothing really to delve into, and that's one of my biggest problems. There's no meat onto the bone. It's a very dry story, and and I know a lot of people think about that about most pure historicals, but I think this one is where that complete is kind of justified, because nobody really tackles anything until later on in the story. But I'll get into that. My sister's going on, they discover that the TARDIS has been taken away and the Trojans have taken it, and they were going to set the TARDIS on fire, but then Vicki. And then Vicki leaves the building, and then we get this like family of Trojan leaders, and they're all like debating on whether she's a Greek spy or not. And the sister of the family is this, like, she can like tell the future. She's like what's it called, a fortune teller. And she even tells them that there's going to be a disaster where the Greeks get something into the city and then they'll come out of it. But at this moment they think that's the TARDIS. So some of them are very suspicious. The father is not quite sure. And then there's the two sons of the family. One of them becomes Vicky's love interest. And yeah, it comes right out of nowhere. And you don't buy it at all. It really annoys me. And it has nothing to do with the themes of the story. And god damn it, Vicki deserved better. This guy, he's just really bland and forgettable, and you don't buy the fact that he and Vicki even have a connection other than them basically stating that they love each other. However, the other son in this story, Paris, is phenomenal, and that's only one name you gotta thank. Barry bloody Ingham. How cool is that he's in Doctor Who? Now, for those of you who don't know, Barry Ingham is Basil from The Great Mouse Detective, a Disney film from the 1980s, which is fantastic. And I highly recommend that you watch The Great Mouse Detective if you haven't seen it already. Just spot on. But we're not talking about Great Mouse Detective. We're sadly talking about The Mythmaker. But luckily, Barry Ingham is phenomenal in this, and I love his character as well. He's sort of like this casual sort of Trojan, and he's a bit full of himself, but he's also quite casual as well. And there's a great bit where when he's the one who captured the TARDIS and took it with him, and he's expected everybody to praise him, and everybody's just like, what the hell is it? And he's so full of himself. And there's a great bit later on where he has to fight Stephen, who's trying to get the TARDIS back. So he goes into the city to try and save Vicki. And so they have like a battle, and then he kind of explains, and Stephen's like, I didn't realise that you were Paris, the greatest warrior of all of the Trojan, and all the Greeks fear you. And he's like, oh really? Oh, that's good to know. But yeah, I really love him, and it's brilliant, his role. So definitely check if you're interested in seeing Barry as in Doctor Who. He also played a Thal in the Dalek movie, if you're interested as well. But we're not talking about that again. I know I'm distracting my distract myself from talking about the Mythmakers. It just didn't do anything for me. But we are getting to more interesting stuff now, as with when Vicki comes out, she explains that she's from the future and she basically knows what's happening, and this woman, the fortune teller, believes that Vicky's a bad omen and it'll bring death and destruction if she stays around, so they should kill her. But Vicki obviously knows that the Trojans don't win the war and they're going to die a lot soon. So, but she can't obviously tell them. And there's a great bit where Vicki is talking to the father character and he's like, please, if you're from the future, tell us something that could help us win the war. And she's constantly trying to change the subject about talking about his kids and stuff. So there are some interesting bits, and it's got that, it's not like full on like the Aztecs with that kind of storytelling, but it's got that taste when it deals with Vicki. So back with the Doctor, he's basically forced to make plans for the Greeks, who have now worked out that he's not a god. He is just like a traveller. And his first plan is to make a catapult over to the other side, which he knew was going to fail. It was going to be ridiculous. However, everything starts to change when I believe it's Homer, the guy who controls the army. I can't remember if it is Homer's the guy in real life. Can't remember if it was his character in this. He is like, okay, a great plan, but you, Doctor, you're the one who's going first in the catapult. And then the Doctor's like, actually, my plan, this isn't a good plan. Let me think of another plan. And then we get the Doctor coming up with the Trojan Horse idea, which is very interesting. So, in the Doctor Who mythology, the Trojan Horse is a paradox, because the Doctor got the idea from hearing about the Battle of Troy, and the Battle of Troy then had the horse because the Doctor gave him the idea, but the Doctor had gotten the idea from the Battle of Troy, and it's just, the time travel, hooray. And I wish they'd kind of delved a bit into that, but it's never really mentioned. It's just sort of just like, oh yeah, right, this is one of another Doctor's plans. And the Doctor kind of knows what's going on, but yeah, strangely, I think Doctor and Stephen's moments are quite forgettable, which I find really surprising, because despite William Hartnell really hating this story, to the point where he called the director a fool, and he didn't speak to two of the actors. It was also a very hard time for him when they were making this, because his auntie passed away during the filming of the story, and he wasn't allowed any time off to attend her funeral. His auntie basically raised him up as her own son, so that must have been really hard on William Hartnell. I don't put any hard will against him for hating this story. But Peter Purves, this is his favourite story that he's done, The Mythmakers, which I find really surprising, because despite the fact that he gets a pretty cool Greek costume and he gets into one fight with Paris, he hardly does anything. maybe Peter Pratt is just really likes this period setting. But anyway, so Vicki and Stephen, they meet each other as Paris takes Stephen into the same room, and they notice each other, and they think, and obviously they believe that Stephen is a Greek. So the fact that they know each other should mean that she is a Greek spy, and so they send him to the dungeons. And yeah, the whole interesting aspect of it kind of like disappears of it. And then we get the Trojan coming in, and the Trojan thinking the war is over, so they let Vicki go, and Vicki then frees Stephen, and Stephen escapes, and the war kind of ensues. But then in part 4, we get introduced to a character called Catalina, who in here does absolutely nothing. She's a handmaiden to the fortune teller woman, the daughter woman, and that's literally all her character. She's literally just a side character. But man, for those of you who know, she hardly has anything, and she only appears in part 4. God damn it, classic 60s Doctor Who. Why do you keep doing this to me, where you introduce a new companion at the last episode of your current story? I kind of just gave the game away, didn't I? Stephen, then the war kind of breaks out as the Greeks come out of the Trojan Horse, and everybody's dying and stuff. And whilst the battle's going on, the Doctor finds Vicki, and they gotta go back for Stephen. And Vicki is like, Doctor, I need to talk to you. And they go inside the TARDIS. And then later on, then you see the doors open and Vicki leaves, and the Doctor kind of like quietly looks at her. And that's the end of Vicki. We don't even see their goodbye. It's just sort of, she kind of leaves because she fell in love with that guy, and she kind of likes it here. So she constantly likes being questioned where her loyalty stands and stuff. That doesn't make any sense. What such a disappointing ending to Vicki. But yeah, that video I mentioned in The Rescue, where I hope that it would help me with how I view Vicki better. And for the most part, it has worked very well. Especially in stories where she becomes a big part in it. But yeah, the Mythmakers is a very disappointing ending to it. And if you really like this character, then you're going to be highly disappointed. And once this happens, Vicki asks Catalina to help Stephen back to the TARDIS. And so Catalina finds Stephen, and they go into the TARDIS. Without even the Doctor asking, or the Doctor even mentioning it, she just takes him into the ship, and that's Catalina's intro to the TARDIS. And yeah, it's just sort of like an afterthought. It's very strange, very bizarre. And in the TARDIS, Stephen is like, "Where's Vicki? We need to go, Vicki." And he's like, "No, she wanted to stay. It was her decision." And it's like, there was a war out there, Doctor. She could easily get killed. Stephen has the right idea. Why did the Doctor leave her in a battle zone? What? Seriously, Doc, you an idiot or something? So then Catalina has a little chat with the Doctor, and she thinks that she is in the Trojan version of hell. I can't remember what she called it. And she basically believes the Doctor is a god. And she says that fortune teller woman basically told her that she's going to die very soon. And the Doctor's like, "Oh, rubbish, lot of rubbish." And then that's how our story ends. So yeah, what did I think about the story? In my opinion, in our marathon, this is the first one I generally didn't like. Not that it's bad, I didn't hate it, it didn't make my blood boil, but it's mainly just bland, boring, forgettable, and not a lot to talk about. There were some really great ideas there, which are every classic Doctor Who story, in my opinion, always has something very juicy about it. But this story, the juice is not enough for the rest of the story, and the juice is with the whole debate on whether they should trust Vicki or not, because she's a time traveller and there's this fortune teller who actually knows the future, and so that puts us viewers in an interest. But yeah, that's just a small aspect of the story. Every time it cuts to the Doctor and Stephen, I got really bored until Stephen met up with the Paris character. And yeah, the only redeeming factor is that he's in it. So there you go. And that's the Mythmakers. So join me next time where we get into the grandest story as ever made in Doctor Who history. Doctor Who, the Dalek Master Plan, Part 1. Oh yeah, baby, we're breaking this down. So yeah, we're doing Part 1, the Festival of Stephen, and then Part 2. It makes sense when we watched them, and I was kind of hoping that I would get some story set in between Part 1 and Part 2, but because of this virus that's been happening, that hasn't happened. So I'm still breaking it down to Parts 1 and 2 and the middle one of the Festival of Stephen, but we'll get there then. So join me next time for Part 1 of the grandest Doctor Who story that's ever existed, and see if the Mission of the Unknown was a greater setup or not. Let's find out on the Doctor Who Marathon.